Aflatoxins are poisonous compounds produced by molds or fungi when they invade not well-dried foods such as maize, groundnuts, sorghum, soybean, millet, cassava, sweet potatoes, spices and fish, as well as animal feeds if processed from contaminated raw materials like maize and soybean. These toxins must be prevented from contaminating foods and animal feeds as they cause death to humans and animals and have been linked to liver cancer. In children, they reduce growth, leading to stunting and kwashiorkor. Generally, toxins weaken the body's immune system, leading to escalation of effects of other illnesses such as HIV/AIDS, malaria, and cancer. Uganda Bureau of Statistics estimates that about 70% of Uganda's working population is employed in agriculture that grow different crops, which boosts the economy of the country. The nature of the milling industry in Uganda begins with very heavy bags of grains brought from different regions of the country sold to the millers. When the maize gets to the final destination, this is checked first, but why is this done?
Omanyi mu byalo eyo waliyo abantu abatali beesimbu n'apakira ensawo n'apakirayo n'amayinja, so bwetuuka wano eno tukebera bino wammanga tukebera.
Farmers are not very honest. You will find when some maize is not dry enough. That's why we follow the UNBS guidelines to ensure quality.
Era bakubamu ne bagamba nti omuyonjo ensawo n'egenda. Era UNBS byegamba nti abantu abamu bakola ebintu nga tebiri ku muntu. Naffe tugezaako kulaba nga tukola ekyo kyova twaleta checkpoint ez'olabaawo. Kilo zino oziraba tukube ebbomba za mirundi egi. Tukube ebbomba nga tunapima ensawo ya kasooli eyo. Ne tukuba n'ebbomba nga tumaze opima ensawo ya kasooli. Era bwe tumala kilo zino nga tuzipima nga tuzidividingamu into two kubanga abantu baba mirundi egi. Waliwo aleese kasooli okumutunda then waliwo n'agula. Ebbomba yasoose y'oyo omuntu nga tannazitunda nga ensawo tennapimibwa. Ebbomba esemba y'oyo omuntu ng'amaze okutunda. Ndowooza okitegedde maama.
But with the entire value chain, how can it be handled to have better products on the Ugandan market?
So transportation is a critical aspect in the value chain. Is that the fuso which will bring cows from Nakasongola will come to Kampala, drop the cows, go back and bring maize. Ideally, that shouldn't be the way produce is transported, because these are really different forms you cannot be able to transport chicken at the same time you're actually transporting maize. It means you're directly going to contaminate the maize and in effect have a lot of organisms grow there which have an effect on the safety of the produce. So the transportation is a key aspect. It's still a problem because our private sector is heavily liberalized. So anyone who has a truck can be able to transport, and we don't have the full grip on enforcement in that area, because at that stage it's still not within the purview of UNBS per se when the maize is actually coming from the garden. It is only when it reaches the mill and gets processed and now it's actually going to get packed as a prepackaged product for consumers that we actually start getting interested. So it's still an issue that the government needs to sort out in terms of handling the entire value chain, other than having regulators at different parts of the value chain, which doesn't actually help at the end of the day. So the solution should be for the farmer: don't dry maize on the ground. Harvest only when the maize has reached a certain level of dryness in the garden. So don't harvest when the maize is really still fresh, because if you're going to dry it, that means you actually need a lot of energy, which should be sunlight, to dry it. If you're storing it, don't store it in probably a store which is with other animals, chicken and whatever. You just throw it in a corner in a store somewhere, and of course
Speaking to the head of millers from Chisenyi, says Uganda, basing much on agriculture, however many people currently are more into maize growing and mailing.
Eggwanga lyaffe lino Uganda lyaliyimiridde ku bya bulimi. Sinnalabawo nnyo ngombo ndala eyinza yakyusiza kintu ekyo, era basically bw'ogenda okutunula tuyimiridde nnyo ku by'obulimi. Kubanga watali kulima tosobola kulya, tosobola kubeerawo.
We are so worried about the price of maize because its production is very low in villages, while on market it's very expensive. I urge everyone into this business to keep the seeds clean, because when it's processed, the value decreases.
Ebintu bingi lwakuba ffe basically tuyimiridde nnyo ku mmere enkalu omuli kasooli, okuba obuwunga, ebijanjaalo. Bwe twogera ku mmere enkalu erina categories nnyingi, egattamu obulo, egattamu muwogo omukalu, egattamu ebintu bingi. Naye lwakuba abantu batunuulidde nnyo kasooli, kubanga kasooli yakulembedde byonna. Era wano ekituufu kasooli bwa wano bwakyankalana, buli kimu nga kikola ki nga kikyankalana. N'olwekyo njagala kubategeeza nti ebintu byonna nga biyimiridde naddala nga kasooli essaawa zino, particularly can take emphasis ku kasooli. Kasooli atukyankalanyeeko.
As millers, they face a challenge of aflatoxins. This has led to some of the countries like Kenya to stop Ugandan maize to be sold on their market. So now it's the time to know about more on aflatoxins.
Nyinza okugamba nti bwe bulaala oba empumbu ezijja ku birime byaffe nga tubikuumye bubi. Okugeza singa oyanika kasooli nga mubisi nga takaze bulungi, kasooli oyo ajja kujjako empumbu.
These are pests that are found inside the maize, and this is brought about by the poor storage system. We also ask the government to come up with initiatives to train our farmers and on how to keep their produce.
Abateekateeka ebintu bino okuva ku mutendera ogusooka baba tebabikuumye bulungi. Era ffe tulowooza nti omulimi asookerwako y'alina okusooka okutunuulirwa. Bwe kuba kusomesa, twagala kusaba gavumenti edireyo ddala ku muntu owa wansi, esindika obukiiko n'abantu abagoberezi bateeke supervision ku bantu baffe aba wansi betugulako ebintu bino, betugulako kasooli, oba bijanjaalo, oba kasooli, oba muwogo omukalu, oba bulo, ebintu byonna. N'olwekyo twagala kubasaba baddeyo wansi bateeketeko obukiiko obusomesa abantu. Abantu banaamala obbasomesa ne bajja ebintu byabwe mu nnimiro nga bikaze bulungi ne babiteekateeka bulungi, bigenda okutuuka ku ffe abaguzi ababibagulako biba bimaze okubeera ku mutindo. Ffe twongeramu mashini zaffe zirongosaamu nga tugabira abantu emmere yaffe ennungi.
These aflatoxins not only cause damage to the human life, but also to the millers. They find themselves working into losses, as well as other countries denying maize from Uganda.
Aflatoxin we zitwaffectingira okusookera ddala abantu baffe bafuna obulwadde bwe tumaliriza abali emmere. Ekyokubiri, ffe nga abakuba obuwunga bw'ogenda okuba kasooli omuleeso oyagala mukuba omuguze ku muntu.
These are very dangerous to human life, but also they are dangerous to the business community, more so those milling. Sometimes the maize seeds are green, so we end up using it as maize bran.
N'olwekyo ku mutendera oguteekateeka emmere already bekasa oleeta kasooli ne tugenda omukutuusa mu kyuma ne tumukebera nga si mulungi, tumugjamu tumuteeka wansi, ogenda muguzaaki tewali, kitegeeza ogenda mukubamu maize bland.
Hakim Mufumbira, an official from Uganda National Bureau of Standards, explains what aflatoxins are and the crops they attack. He further discloses the types of aflatoxins among different crops.
Okay, so aflatoxins, you would want to call them poison or toxins which are produced by certain molds. Molds in Luganda would be something like empumbu, for someone to understand clearly. So these are produced as a result of growing on the produce. When they grow, they need, like any other microorganisms, they need water and nutrients to grow. So most times when they grow in produce, it's because the produce has water available. So there is water in the maize, or there are nutrients in groundnuts, or there is water in sorghum, and all those products which are susceptible to growth of the mold. Not all molds that grow on food products can produce aflatoxins. In fact, most of them don't produce aflatoxins. It's only two types of molds called Aspergillus flavus and Aspergillus parasiticus, only two of them. So these are produced in the product and they remain inside the product. So whereas you might find maize grain that has mold, it is not an indication that actually there is aflatoxins in the maize. You may find maize grain without visibility of any mold, but with high levels of aflatoxins.
On the miller's side, they have put measures in place, like using certain chemicals to ensure they protect the grains from aflatoxins. However, this has not helped them on the export market.
Ekintu ekyo bakuba abantu bakitaputa bubi nebituyambako kulaba nga kasooli waffe asigala nga ali safe nga taliiriddwa kawuka. Naye ate kino kyetunuulira olwaleero bannakenya kye bagamba nti bwe tuba tuteekamu ebikerende ebyo.
We use these chemicals to protect our maize, but it's very saddening to see Kenya stopping us to sell on their market. We feel very bad because most traders now don't have an opportunity.
Otherwise, tunotunuulira ensonga eyo watu tunagigenda wala nnyo. Naye sometimes zibaamu ezitali nga si ensonga enkulu. Oli n'agamba nti gundi taleeta tayingiza kino, gundi yalina okukiyingiza. So waliwo sometimes ensi ziba zaagala okubanga zezitwalayo ebintu ebyo ne zigisalawo ne zigamba ati nno zino tukigobye. Naye ng'oluusi kyekibeera ekituufu.
From a research on cancer indicates that many people consume aflatoxins through food, and this takes time for the effects to be revealed.
Toxins that has been rated as potentially cancerous by the International Association of Research on Cancer, and there have been cases of, for example, liver cancer in most of the people have consumed aflatoxins. It doesn't arise from acute toxicity, meaning that you may not eat food there and then with aflatoxins and get affected immediately. That's what acute toxicity is. But it has been related with chronic toxicity. So you keep on consuming over time. So if you use an example, in boarding primary school, children are eating posho on a daily basis, so they keep getting some dose of the toxin. Each other day they take posho and porridge and any other products which are susceptible, so it keeps on growing. So the effects will actually be realized later on in life, and that is what is called chronic toxicity. So we have seen, of course, rising cases within the Uganda Cancer Institute of liver cancer, which is the most potent form in which the toxin creates, although it is not heavily conclusive, because the current statistics that we have from the Uganda Cancer Institute is that the biggest forms of cancer are mainly cervical cancer, breast cancer, which are not related to consumption of food.
These toxins have a negative impact on the environment as well as the economy, which hinders the growth of the country. However, there are measures that have been put in place to ensure this problem is prevented.
There's a significant impact with regard to trade, I'm sure every one of us has been seeing the difficulties we have been having with our commodities crossing the borders because of the same presence of the toxins. No one wants to take the commodity because of the presence of the toxins. And of course, it also has impacts on environment, because when you have produce which you need to destroy, you probably need to incinerate them, and then there's an effect in the environment. The good thing is that now there are processes, there are ways of eliminating the toxins in the product. The first one is a preventive method, which is a biocontrol method. So, and this one requires that you grow the maize which has been already incorporated with the mold to fight the mold in the garden.
Electricity is one of the major requirements in maize milling. The millers have made a plea to the government to reconsider the electricity bills. He further called on the government to investigate more on the chemicals for maize they use.
Government should reduce on the electricity bills. That's why we keep hiking our prices for portion. We also use some chemicals for the aflatoxins that invade the maize grains.
Nabyo gavumenti ebe ino tuyambako kubanga eri mukotaina village tugenda eri muli abichupuli erigino terira bikogendera banga uli watutte kasoli ba mulidero bukangera lya chichupuli.
Uganda National Bureau of Standards has come up with measures to ensure that these aflatoxins are prevented and improving on trade between East African community, as Hakim discloses.
What we have done, first of all, we established the maximum limits which when you consume as an individual food which has some minimal amount of aflatoxins, it will not affect you even if you consume in large quantities. So we established that, and we have the limits apply across the 6 partner states in the EAC, because the standard has been harmonized for all the commodities which are susceptible to aflatoxins: maize, sorghum, groundnuts, oilseeds, and the rest of the products. All of them have been harmonized in the EAC, which means that we can easily be able to trade with our partners without any problems. Secondly, we also do testing to confirm that the produce that is sold on the Ugandan market, as well as that might be exported, meets the requirements. So we have state-of-the-art food safety laboratories that are able to test samples and confirm either the presence or absence of aflatoxins, as well as quantifying them in the amounts that are required for the safety of the consumers.
Aflatoxin contamination of foods starts from the farm during crop growth and continues as the produce moves along the value chain. Therefore, management of this problem must start from farming practices or agricultural practices to the post-harvest cycle of the produce, including processing and marketing. Naomi Mutumba, for Smart 24.